So now, what are the solutions, I would say, to reduce drip loss? That's a main question that everybody has on the lips, I would say. What are the solutions to reduce drip loss? And maybe, Cécile, you can introduce first the ideas about the potential solutions.
Yes, so as we explained you, a main factor of variation for drip loss and I would say water holding capacity is the ultimate pH of the meat, which is related to the glycogen content. So solutions that can reduce, for example, the glycogen content of muscle will be efficient to reduce drip loss and cooking loss and improve processing yield. So for many years in RA, we have studied the factors that affect the glycogen in muscle. And we have found that there is two main factors, which are genetic and nutrition, but also some management practice that can affect this character. And so by modulating this factor, we think that it will be possible to improve meat quality and especially water holding capacity.
Let's talk maybe about more about genetic to start.
Yes. So genetic, it is interesting to know that in broiler, most of the quality traits, meat quality traits, are under a genetic control, and most of them are related to the ultimate pH of the meat. So for this reason, we have started a selection on these traits to look at the consequence for other meat quality traits, including drip loss and cooking loss, of course. So by studying this model, which represent finally meat with the acid pH and a meat with a very high pH, we were able to demonstrate that it is possible by this way to reduce the drip loss, to reduce the cooking loss, to improve by 3 points the processing yield, and also to improve the color of the meat.
That is a very good tool, in fact, a very good model, in fact, to work on the basis. How do you explain the ultimate pH and how do you correlate the ultimate pH and the drip loss and so on. So I think it's a very important model. Maybe Massimiliano, you can. Maybe you have other point to add on that. Sorry, Cécile. Maybe on the nutrition aspects, you want to comment a little bit more.
Yes. So if we can see that the genetic can be and selection on meat quality can be efficient, it is also important to understand how animal nutrition can modulate muscle glycogen and can modulate the ultimate pH of meat. So this was not really studied before, and we started some studies on different aspects, such as antioxidant or amino acid.
So maybe let's start with the antioxidant, Massimiliano. Yeah, because you talk about membrane integrity, yes, so I think it's a big issue.
Yes, because especially PSC meat condition is associated with pre-slaughter stress, especially pre-slaughter stress. So it is important to increase the tolerance of the bird to pre-slaughter stress and especially to heat stress. So dietary use of antioxidant, especially vitamin E and selenium, has been demonstrated that is able to increase the tolerance of bird, especially to heat stress, so to prevent or to mitigate the occurrence of PSC meat. But as I explained before, vitamin E and selenium can be accumulated in the muscle, and this can prevent also the damages of membrane, and so prevent losses of liquid from the inside and to outside spaces. So antioxidant use in diet can have two effects. One, to preventing stress during pre-slaughter phases, and second, during processing, to prevent damages to membrane integrity. And also there are also some other study that also tested also like a natural antioxidant, and natural antioxidant can be effective but cannot be accumulated in the muscle cell. So the use in the diet is not so effective like vitamin E and selenium.
So I'm sure that there will be quite a lot of questions about the strategy, nutritional strategy to work on that. How long should you supply the animal before the slaughter and so on? We'll come back later on that. We talk about antioxidants, and what about amino acids? I know that Massimiliano addressed the question of protein content and so on. Do you think that with amino acid we can affect the protein and affect the meat quality? Cécile?
Yes, actually, amino acid supply have been studied for many years in relation to performance and meat production yield. But several years ago, we start to look at the effect of amino acid supply on meat quality traits. And a first study demonstrates very well that supplementing birds with lysine was able to increase breast meat yield, which was well known, decrease also body fatness, but as a very interesting result, we were able to show that it also decreased drip loss by increasing the ultimate pH of the meat. So after this promising result, we tried to figure out the relationship between the amino acid balance in the diet and the ultimate pH of the meat. And we designed several studies to look at the response of birds in terms of ultimate pH. And what we demonstrated is that the balance of amino acid can really change the amount of glycogen in muscle with real impact on meat quality. And this is very efficient because by changing the amino acid balance during 3 days before slaughter, we were also able to change drip loss and processing yield of the meat.
Okay, that is very interesting. But if we look at maybe the type of results you obtain, what could be at the end the consequence and the practical consequence at the animal level?
So the consequence for meat quality was, of course, significant. But with our partner, we tried to look at the calculation regarding the cost and the gain we can have by feeding birds with a good amino acid balance. And what we found is that if the diet is well done to produce meat with a high pH, we can, compared to the control, we can gain about 100 euros per ton of meat produced. And on the other side, if the diet is not well designed and make to produce acid meat, the loss can be very high because it's almost 400 euros.
So, in fact, in some way, you say that the difference or the variation could be up to 600 euro, per ton.
Yes, it's
but I would say in practical conditions, do you think that people can use that strategy today, or is there still some refinement to develop on how to practically use that?
Actually, I think our study is not a ready-to-use solution because people, they have to adapt their nutritional strategy to the ability of bird and to the physiological capacity of birds. But it clearly showed that a diet that limit protein synthesis and increase energy storage is not good for processing yield and for drip loss. So I think by this knowledge, it can help nutritionists to design a diet and to help to produce meat with higher pH and at least less variable pH.
So we really need to understand better, in fact, the evolution of the nutrition prior to slaughter and really play a little bit more with the feed formulation and to really see up to the benefits and maybe without too much impact on the feed cost at the end.
Yes.
So that's a dream, but I think it's...
No, that's not
you
a
look like
dream
it's a
because
possibility.
in these experiments, we have made several. The cost of the feed was not really increased because we increased lysine, but we decreased the other amino acids. So the cost on feed was very low. But by adding all the benefit we can have all along the chain until the processing, we can have a very high benefit. And I think now it is important to not only calculate the benefit on the breast meat yield, but it is also important to consider all the waste and all the losses after slaughter.
And after you also worked on specific amino acids to see if there was some effect on some amino acid, like sulfur amino acid, I would say, on through their antioxidant potential. So we consider first the amino acids as just break of construction, but also maybe the roles beyond this protein deposition. So as antioxidant, for instance, can you comment a little bit more on what you did on that issues?
Yes, sulfur amino acids are very interesting because, as you said, they are amino acid to build the protein, but they have also a specific role on the antioxidant response. And by these two ways, I think they are able to improve meat quality because they will protect the protein from oxidation, but they are also able to modulate the ultimate pH of the meat. And this was demonstrated in an experiment by using the HMTBA instead of classical methionine. And we were able to show that by using it, both the ultimate pH was increased and oxidative stability was also increased with a positive impact on meat quality, especially drip loss.
So still some work to do on amino acids,
yes,
in fact, to improve...
Of course, but I think nutrition has to be studied in relation with, of course, performance and feed efficiency, meat yields, but really nutritionists has to consider also meat quality in their study.
Yeah. It's very interesting that you demonstrated, both that you could manipulate, in fact, the meat quality by the previous diet before slaughter. Maybe I will ask Paul now, in the practical conditions, do you measure drip loss in slaughter plants today? Because that's a main question we have very often.
I cannot speak for anybody in the supply chain because I would say, only working in one plant, even if I'm visiting a lot of them. In the plant where I'm currently working, we are not measuring, but we have a quite good view of it. Is it more important or less important? What I can tell you is changing from every day, within a day, within a flock.
We ask to Cécile and Massimiliano if they had some ideas about solution to reduce drip loss, but I would like to ask the people from the industry also to say, do they have found a way to reduce drip loss? Have they found solutions to reduce drip loss? So Paul, if you can objectively, I would say, answer to that question, do you have a solution to reduce drip loss?
Very interesting question because I have no real answer. If we would, I would say as a joke, if we would know about it, either it would be a secret, either we can better say that we don't know really. We are facing this changing situation all the time, but it is more, it's bigger than it was some years ago.
Paul, as you are a European representative of the poultry processor, I would have a question. Do you think that we are all facing the same issues in European countries? And I think your feedback from the field is interesting on that.
Yes. And what is easy, I am not a scientist, okay, but I am traveling a lot, and I can say anywhere that you have drip losses in a retail pack. So we are, all of us, facing the situation. Maybe also we could say that as heavy or heavier the birds are, maybe the percentage is little bit higher, but of course, as a piece of meat are bigger, there is more drip losses.
Okay.
To be back, excuse me, to be back on facing the situation from country to country, I am speaking about the European side because we are air chilling, and it is really totally different in some countries on retail pack where you are water chilling because it is an adding.
Yeah, we say at the beginning that we are focusing on drip losses. We don't talk about, I would say, the breast milk default, myopathies, and so on. But it's interesting to see, is there a link between the current breast milk defaults and what we have talked before, drip loss and water holding capacity? So Massimiliano, maybe you can comment on that.
This is an interesting question because market is pushing to have heavier bird because of the increased demand for cut-up and especially processed product. So, as demonstrated by Cécile in several studies, if you increase the slaughtering age, there is a decrease in glycogen content in the muscle, so there is an increase in pH. And this may be associated to an increased water holding ability as explained before. But overall, you may see a decrease in water holding ability. Why? Maybe because there is an increase in occurrence of abnormality, like, for example, PSC meat, because heavier birds are less prone to tolerate heat stress during pre-slaughter time, but also because if you increase slaughter age, you can have also an higher occurrence of breast myopathy, like white striping and especially wooden breast. And if we look at the pH of wooden breast, we can see that the pH is higher than normal, more or less very similar to DFD condition. So we can expect that wooden breast can have a very good water holding ability. And if we look at data on drip loss, value are not so different in respect to normal meat, but if we cook wooden breast meat, we can observe a huge flow out of liquid during cooking. And this especially because there is a reduction of protein content in woody breast, and this is the main cause because of the reduced water holding ability of woody breast. So in this case, there is no pH effect, but there is a protein effect that affect water holding ability.